4, 3,
2.
2, 1.
You've got to eat it like a lollipop, I'm afraid. Yolanda, would you like to introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are, what you do, blah, 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 blah?
Gosh, what do I do? I mean, I'm retired, so now I just do everything I want, all the things I've ever wanted to do and I couldn't do as a teacher for 25 years. I taught psychology A-level and other things for 25 years. In fact, I taught French and massage as well at one point. But psychology was my most, I used to do massage workshops. I used to think that that was going to be my career, actually working in massage, because I'm a great believer in the healing power of touch. Because that's what we do when something hurts. We rub it better, don't we, with our children, etc. But massage has now got some sort of connotations, which is a pity. So anyway, that isn't the career I followed, but teaching psychology. And I started off teaching evening classes in Burnham-on-Sea, and I did that for 10 years. And then I ended up teaching at Strode College for about 9 years part-time. And then I moved to Richard Hewish and taught there for 15, and I retired at the age of 64. I'm now 71, and I'm loving retirement and doing all the things I've ever wanted to do until, I'm doing them all now, touch wood. So that's who I am. And I live in Bridgewater, and I live on my own. I'm divorced. I have 3 grown-up children. I have a 97-year-old mother who lives around the corner. And that's pretty much, that's me. That's my context.
Wow. That's lovely.
Thank you.
That is great. So what do you do now that you didn't do before, that you wanted to do, but you didn't do because you were teaching?
Oh, crikey. Well, I've got free time. I think when you're a full-time teacher, and that's probably primary school as well as secondary and sixth form college, which is what I was teaching in mostly, most evenings are spent doing college work, or you're either marking or preparing, and the weekends are pretty much the same. And the holidays, although people say, oh, teachers have such wonderful long holidays, and they do. But if you're a teacher, your mind never stops thinking about your students, what you're going to do with them. When you see something on the TV, you think, oh, this would be good for teaching, or why I should be recording this. That was in the days when we had video recorders. And so now that I'm not doing that, those bits of my mind are completely free to pursue all the things that I find interesting. And I love writing. I've published 2 books since I retired, and I love traveling. And I'm just about to go off on my travels again. In October, I'm going to be in Italy for 3 weeks. I'm traveling around on my own. So I swim in most mornings. I visit my mum. I meet lots of friends. I'm not exactly a lady that lunches. That's not really me, but I do a lot of walking. I love nature. I love rambling. I love meeting new people. I love communicating in different languages, and I love seeing the world. I'm going off down the Nile in November, going to Venice in December to see Venice in the winter with my partner. And so I just do all the things, like have a good time, generally speaking.
And you have a partner now?
I've had a partner for 15 years, but he doesn't live with me, and that's probably why it's been 15 years, to be honest. He lives in Wiltshire, so we're about 50 miles apart, and he drives down to see me about once every 2 weeks for the weekend, and every now and again we manage a holiday.
That sounds lovely.
So does he come on all your travels with you?
No,
the majority of them?
Hardly any of them now.
Oh, really?
When we were first together, we went on all our travels together, but now he has realised he just can't keep up with me, and he won't retire, you see. So I'm retired, and so I want to go and see the world. Realise that at 71, the horizon is shrinking each year that goes by. I think, oh, will I be able to do this in a year's time? Will my knees allow me to walk up that steep hill? But no, he has his own business, and he won't retire, and so therefore I travel mostly on my own.
So what does he do in his own?
Security. He has his own electronic security consultancy business in Wiltshire. So he's busy with that, fixing people's entry systems and all that, more complicated, and fitting security cameras and doing things for the council, that sort of stuff, which he finds interesting, and of course I don't. But that's it was ever thus, wasn't it? So I just go off travelling on my own.
Good for you.
Not always on my own. Sometimes I do go with a group, but mostly I just plan it all on my own.
Well, interestingly enough, I think you've met Mandy when you came here to see what us as trustees do.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And she wants to travel on her own, but she's kind of not brave enough 100% to go and just get to the airport and get on and do that. So we're trying to encourage her to do that a little bit more, aren't we? But
well, I belong to various Facebook groups which are for women traveling solo, and there's one for the over 60s and one for the over 70s. And just this week I met one of the over 70s ladies in Wales who loves to travel. Her husband died last year, and so she now is in a similar situation as Mandy by the sound of it. She wants to carry on traveling, but she doesn't want to do it on her own. So we met for lunch, and I gave her a few tips about what I do. And she just sent me a message this morning saying, thank you for the wonderful I thought informative. She seemed to think that I'd given her some pearls of wisdom. So, all I just told her was, start with something close to home, go to Ireland on a coach trip, or if you fancy being somewhere where you know the language, and that's it. But so there are lots of groups that Mandy can join.
Why do you even imply that you can't give pearls of wisdom?
I think because, well, I thought we were just having lunch, really, and I just told her about the different journeys that I'd done, and she's written me this really lovely reply this morning, which made it sound like I had been so incredibly helpful to her. And I'm thinking, really? Did I say anything that's really going to open any doors for her?
I think you do that a lot, because
Do
I
you?
I do. I felt that about our relationship. I mean, we haven't known each other for very long, but there was an instant connection there. I felt an instant connection. But also what I have felt is that you forget how much valuable knowledge you have, and how much by sharing or just spending time with people, going for lunch with a complete stranger is a really kind thing to do. You're partaking your knowledge. You're giving that lady your knowledge. I think it's wonderful.
Well, yes, it's nice of you to say so. I think maybe as having been a teacher for 25 years, I've kind of got used to the idea that you're giving information to people, but usually you don't have such a receptive audience as the lady in Wales the other day. It's usually because my daughter used to go to the same college where I used to teach, and I think her impression was that I was, from what she'd heard, she never ever did my subject, which was psychology, and I think she just got the impression that I was a pretty boring teacher.
Do you think you were boring?
Yeah. I think I probably was. I think the trouble is with psychology that it's got a lot of theory in it.
Oh, I know, it's really...
And a lot of students, when they come at 16, they're looking for something that, if I can use the inverted commas thing, people say, oh, it's a sexy subject. Nothing to do with sex, but it was very popular, very trendy, and it has been for about the last 30 years. Because I started teaching A-level well, as I said, I've been retired for 8 years, and I taught for 25 years. So more than 30 years ago, it suddenly became a big topic, a big subject. So students at school who'd never done anything like psychology, they knew geography, they knew history, they either liked it or loathed it or whatever. And suddenly they got a chance to do something completely different, like sociology or psychology. So we used to have hundreds and hundreds. We used to have in our first year intake at Richard Hewish, we would sometimes have, I used to teach 5 groups, and that would be about 120 students. And that was just me. So you imagine we had about 5 of us in the team. We had so many psychology students. So, but I think it's a much more theoretical subject than people realize. And I think that is the problem, that people expect it's all going to be about, I don't know, like
emotions,
body language, and mind reading, and all clinical. They just want to know about mental illness and problems, but they don't want to learn about Piaget's theory of developmental or cognitive psychology. It's all that they think that's very dull. But so also, I think I was boring, probably. Yeah,
there is quite a connection, isn't there, to adding up numbers and looking at theory and looking at how people have researched it and how they've got to that theory, and things with psychology that people don't even have an understanding of.
No, sadly, there's a lot of maths in psychology. They have to know statistics at a very basic level, and they have to be very critical so that they can look at a piece of research, and it has to be peer reviewed. They have to understand the concept of a piece of research. It doesn't hold water unless it's been peer reviewed, and what you read as a headline in the Daily Mail is not proper research. I mean, they have to understand about cause and effect, and a lot of people don't realize that because 2 things are connected, it doesn't mean that one thing causes the other. Like I took this tablet, the next day I felt wonderful, and they think it's the tablet. It may have been 100 other things that happened, which it might have been the tablet, but it doesn't mean that it was. And that sort of scientific approach, the scientific method is what we teach in psychology, and I think that is very dreary for a lot of students who just want to be doing fun and having games. And so we did used to have quite a few games. I was trying to think of ways in which we could make it into a game, but at the end of the day, they've got to do a difficult exam. And no amount of games is ever going to persuade the examiner that they know their theory, unfortunately. So yes, I do think I was a boring teacher.
So what did you, as a boring teacher, Because you must have been reasonably successful at it, otherwise they'd have got rid of you.
Yes.
So you must have had some results.
Oh yes, otherwise they would have sacked me.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know what colleges are like these days. It's
all about their
grades.
stats.
It's all about the grades, and at the end of the year, all our results were analysed. You know, fine tooth comb, and we used to work out who'd done the best. You know, who'd got the best results. And of course, when we first started at the beginning of the year, it was great to have all the A stream students in your class, because it meant that so many things go hand in hand with that approach. It means that when students are good students, A grade students, it means you can kind of take for granted they're going to have good attendance, they're going to be well focused in lessons, they're not going to be disruptive, they're going to do their homework. All those things help to make an A student. I mean, there are other things, of course, as well. They've got to have the IQ to start with. But I mean, and so we used to all want to have all the A grades. But of course, the problem is your results need to show improvement. So the best thing to do is to have the students with the lowest grades, because then you can show that they've improved. If they're all A grade to start with, what are you going to do? How do you measure improvement?
That's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, we weren't exactly fighting over the lower groups and saying, "Oh, I'm going to have the ones that have only just scraped passes in 5 GCSEs." But I mean, it did help to have some of those students so we could really show improvement, which is what it's all about.
That bit about being judged on how many GCSEs you have and whether you've scraped through them or whether you've got really high levels. And it's like, I always find that really odd.
It's horrible. And, you know, one of the things I've been really thinking about lately, and that involves somebody in my own family. I have a grandson who's clearly needs to be statemented in some way or other because he's got some kind of learning difficulty. I don't see him that often. All I know is that he's constantly being excluded from school, and he's 13.
Wow.
Something has got to happen. There's too many. I mean, I was reading the other day, there's been a 20% increase in the number of children who are permanently excluded from school within the last year.
Wow.
Is that to do with the child, or is that to do with the school?
Everything.
Is it to do?
Do you know, Angie, I think it's all about square peg in a round hole. Yeah. And I think we do that to children so early in their life. And if they can't fit into that round hole, the stigma that goes with them, they carry all through the life. Like example, it used to be the, did you pass your 11 plus? When you think that half of the population were being branded failures because they didn't get their 11 plus, and you go through life carrying that on your back and feeling that and the number of people who I hear just in casual conversation, people might say, "Oh, trust me to get that wrong." And I'd say, "Hang on a minute, why do you say trust me?" "Oh, I get everything wrong." And then when you talk to them and you realize they've kind of got that attitude all the way through their life about, "Oh, I never win anything in lotteries," or they buy tombola tickets. Something close to my heart because I'm on the flower show committee in Bridgewater, and the tombola is one of the things I have to do. And people buy tickets and they say, "Oh, I'll have 5." And they say, "I never win anything." Now, this is a purely random thing. There's no way that you can go through life having never won anything on a lottery or a tombola. And they win a ticket and I go, "See?" And they go, "Yeah, but it doesn't normally happen." So they've already got a mindset that they're unlucky, that they're going to mess everything up. I can't do this, or don't ask me to do it because I'll only make a fool of myself. And I kind of want to shake them and say, "Come on."
Yeah, but that's learned, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's ingrained in them.
Yeah.
You know,
where's it come from?
Yeah.
Well, it can come right from that 11 plus kind of thing, from an early age, having been stigmatized by being told, "You don't fit into this round hole, you're a square peg, and we've got to keep on hammering you until you get into it." And that's when all the disruptive behavior starts to appear, when people can't do what other kids are doing.
But I mean, I'm going really controversial now, but that's how it used to be for people who were gay, people, you know, who didn't go through the heterosexual line.
That's right.
And so in a sense, you have that judgment. I mean, when I first started in practice, it was still in the International Classification of Diagnosis of Mental Illness.
Yes.
It was still in there. You know, they still actually felt that people who had made those choices or whatever, I don't know how to describe that, I don't want to describe it if I'm truthful, had a mental illness. I mean, come on.
Absolutely. I mean, I probably told you my father was a psychiatrist, and this is going back, he practiced in Yorkshire. I grew up in Yorkshire, and he practiced psychiatry. He was a consultant psychiatrist in Yorkshire, and he also had a practice in London in the early days when he first moved over to this country after the war. I mean, he was a Holocaust survivor and lived in London for a few years, and And in those days, he used to see patients, and some of them were gay men who had been sent by their parents to try and cure them. And they used to use, I mean, I don't think my father ever did that, but they used to, in those days, they used to use aversion therapy.
Yeah.
And which I'm sure you know
well,
about.
Well, it's still about now. And that was one of the things that came out quite recently, wasn't it? About not abolishing it, but not seeing it as a clinical aid.
Getting rid of it. Well,
aversion therapy is not, it's unethical.
I mean, from the ethics point of view, that was one of the things that students always had to evaluate. Everything we taught them, they had to look at the ethics of everything. And sometimes when you do a piece of psychology research, if you follow all the ethical guidelines, you don't get any good results. No. And that's the problem. Going back to the therapy, the aversion therapy, usually your client has to have agreed to do it. Now, that would be today, if it even happened. But back in the days when my dad was first practicing, I doubt that they had any interest in ethics and consent. It would be, this is my son, he's a homosexual, this is how much money I want you to make him normal.
But it's supposed, in a sense, linking that to your grandson who has had challenges at school, or the kid that's trying to be put into
the square peg round hole
syndrome. You know, that's exactly the same.
It is.
It's, you know, you will do this, you will do that. That, you know, I was a friend. We had dinner with them last week, and I remember when she wanted to become a nursing assistant, and then she never ever believed that she could be a nurse. Never believed, even just couldn't do a NVQ3. It was like a challenge. And I remember sitting here at this table and going, right, come on, we're going to do it together, and I'll help you when you need help. And once she was on that ladder to that and got the confidence to do it. I mean, she runs part of Glastonbury A&E department. She's really amazing, absolutely amazing. If you see the transformation, now is that transformation because education, we're trying to shove her in the hole that she shouldn't have been shoved in, or is that she comes from a very loving, caring, supportive family?
We'll never know, will we? Like I was saying before, there are too many variables for everything. It's like taking the pill and feeling better the next day. What is the thing that made you feel better? Is it because it's sunny today and yesterday it was miserable? Is it your serotonin levels or your melatonin levels, or
whatever? You've eaten well.
You've got, that's right, you've had some chocolate which boosts your serotonin.
Or a digestive biscuit on our display.
Oh dear. Yes, that's right. Now, I think the square peg round hole syndrome, it starts right at primary school, and teachers are trying to hammer these small children. I mean, the idea of having boys particularly, but it doesn't have to be just boys, just get them to sit still from 9 till 3 when they should be running around and they should be discharging their energy outside. But sport's been so reduced in the curriculum, as have things like drama and music and art and creativity. And it just seems like we're sort of worshipping false gods here, because academic success is not the key to happiness.
But do we do that ourselves as well? So like you saying, I am now retiring and doing the things I want to do that you couldn't do when you were working. In a sense, are we our worst own enemies as adults? Because we kind of follow that pattern too. We go to work, we do, you know, you have dinner, you go to bed. It's like, are we restricting our lives as much as, say, the education system restricts our lives because we've got caught up in that cycle?
Well, it's that's why they call it the rat race, because when you're in it, you're on a turntable or a treadmill, and it can't stop. The minute that you have a permanent roof over your head, which is in our society is seen as a sort of sign of stability, because you can't get a bank loan until you've got an address. You've got to have a permanent home. As soon as you've got a permanent home, you're now going to be on that treadmill for ages, because you've got to pay a mortgage or pay your rent, and you've got to find money to do it. So once we've adopted that kind of lifestyle, then we are entering into that world. I mean, the other option is to be like travellers and go around the country and not have to do anything like that. And what kind of a reputation have the travellers got, sadly? I mean, I live in Bridgewater. We're getting ready for the fair, and everybody's saying, lock your doors, lock your doors. It's just tragic. I mean, a whole swathe of our society is being sort of dismissed in with a generalization like that. But I mean, that's, if you want to have a free life where you don't have to be tied down, then you're going to go and live amongst in nature, and how lovely that would be, until you need the kind of things that we need, like a hospital or schools.
Absolutely.
It's a tough one, isn't it? It is a tough one. So how do you help kids who are being excluded? I mean, obviously in the charity, we see young people that are struggling at school and, you know, for a variety of reasons, not just educationally, but partly because they're being bullied or they're lonely or they've got no friends in any way, shape or form. They don't have any hobbies, deprivation at home, you know, whatever the circumstances are very varied. Or indeed some children that have very wealthy families and have and it's the other way if you see if that makes sense.
I mean, I wish I had a magic wand. I mean, what I would want to see, and this would not please feminists, but I mean, I've been a feminist for years and I do believe in equality of opportunities for everybody. But I do think that in a way that the victims of women's so-called emancipation are their children. And if I had my time again, I would not want to go out to work. I would want to be at home and raise my family, because I think motherhood is the most important job anybody can ever do. And to be there when your children need you and when they're growing up and you're helping to shape them, that is probably the best job, the most important job. We are raising the next generation of whatever, teachers, politicians, or whoever they might be. And I think, you know, my mother, who's 97, she says that she can remember what it was like me dropping my children off, especially my youngest, at a childminder when I had to go and be in a classroom in street at 10 to 9 and having to leave my youngest. And I didn't even manage. I mean, my ex-husband did take him on his first day at school, but there's some terrible decisions that you have to make when you're a mother, and you've also got a class of people waiting for you. You know, you send your child to school when they've got a bit of a cough because you think, well, I can't keep him at home because I can't be off work. And I just think it's just so sad. And I don't know if they still do it, but in France, mothers used to be paid in a sort of an allowance to stay home, like a kind of maternity pay to stay and look after your children. And I thought, wow, what an idea that would be. Because what we do by saying, well, women feel the need to go out to work, and I understand that, but that's because I believe that the role of a mother has been so devalued in our society that women feel that they can't actually get the self-esteem that they want from life unless they're out there competing in a man's world. And I do understand that there's lots of brilliant women around who, you know, they can run countries and do all those sorts of things. But I just think it's sad that that the children end up either being brought up by nannies or childminders, and the mums aren't there.
I feel very strong. I mean, I remember my children, you know, myself and Dave, my husband, were very much about one of us always took them to school, one of us always picked them up. In the holidays, we were always there. I think, you know, they went on one of these venture trips once and stuff like that. We didn't have much money, so we couldn't afford it. Because we did that, we looked after our kids. And I think the pressures of doing that puts sometimes too much pressure on people because they financially can't afford to live to a certain degree in some aspects, or people aren't used to going without. And I think that can also be another thing. There's an expectation that you've got to have a mobile phone, or you've got to have a nice car, or you've got to have this, you've got to have that. And I think that's quite a tough one, really, for a lot of people. But also, I was talking to a farmer the other day, and she was saying to me that somebody had made a comment about a job or something. And I thought, she says, I have a job. I'm a farmer.
Quite.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's like, it's quite amazing how some people in society do not view somebody who is got X amount of hundreds of heads of cows to look after as not being a proper job.
Oh my goodness, no. I mean, for many people these days, it's one of the greatest sort of aspirational jobs there is, to work outdoors with animals. I mean, of course, there's the unpleasant elements of having to raise animals because they're often raised for slaughter, which brings up all sorts of other emotions. But a fantastic job. I mean, I do think that when I hear women saying, "Oh, I'm just a housewife," I say, "No, you're not just a housewife. You're doing one of the most important jobs there is." And until we elevate the role of mother, housewife to where I believe it should be, and that we encourage women to stay home and not feel that they're unfulfilled because they just say, "Oh, I don't want to be wiping bottoms or whatever all day long." That's not what it's about. You can be teaching your children and do loads of other things with them if you've got the time. But I agree with what you say about the pressures on people to have 2 salaries or 2 wages coming in, because we've made having all those things a priority. And who is suffering as a result of that? It's the children who are sitting staring at screens and not getting that input from their parents or their parent, whichever.
I was going to say, and the other thing is I think boys can do it too. You know, it doesn't just have to fall on the female. You know, men can look after, stay at home and be stay at home dads. And I think that's my son, sadly, before he died, he would be around for his children an enormous amount. You know, he would do work very early in the morning so he could spend time with them. He would work very long hours when the children were sleeping so that he could actually be a dad. And I think that's just so important to be able to do that. And myself and Dave did the same. You know, we would take it in turns to do that so that there was always somebody there for a parent that was there 100% for that child or the children, the 3 kids that we had.
As I have a niece who works as a solicitor in London, and she earns disgusting amount of money, and she and her husband have just had their first baby, and they've agreed they're doing a complete swap.
Yeah.
When she goes back to work, he's going to look after the baby because he doesn't earn like she does, and that suits them fine. So that little girl will be very attached to her dad.
Yeah.
I'm sure very attached to her mum as well. But it is nice to see young generation. I mean, she's in her early 30s, so still, to me that's young. But obviously, you can still do that in your 20s. You don't have to wait till your 30s.
Yeah,
it's nice to see that sort of trickling down a little bit.
My son-in-law took the paternity leave for one of the children, and he took a portion of the paternity leave because he works for the government. He could do that. They allowed you to do that, and it's like brilliant. Thank you very much. Which meant they halved it, so she had half and he had half. But I think I do think that bit about, is that the right or the wrong thing? Are we sexist? I don't know. Is it unequal to say that you want to be a stay-at-home mum and that's more of their role than it is for a mum? I don't know. You're sitting here hearing all of this.
Quiet, Mike.
I'm sort of listening and thinking about what I think, and some friends of mine are pregnant at the moment, and she doesn't have particularly great maternity pay. It's just statutory, so her choices are quite limited. Where he can have I think it's a year on full pay.
Good. Wow.
Which it's really difficult because she wants to look after the baby. It can be fast either way, but they're probably going to have to make a decision because they can't really afford for maternity pay. You think about kind of taking
it comes down to money.
You would have liked more. I think that is one of the things. It goes to more per month by her working than her not working, which is crazy when you think about it. That's the choice. But she's very career driven. She wants her career, and that's down to her. That's up to her, and that's her choice. But yeah, it is difficult, I think, for young people who are having babies.
The idea of having found a career that you like and having to take a break from it and then possibly not be able to get back in.
That's the difficult part.
And having missed out on training or whatever. So she will have made those sort of accounts and decided it's worth going through. I mean, of course, as we know, those years of children needing childcare at a very, like a childminder, those years go pretty fast.
And there's such great moments that you end up missing if you're not at home. If they're in a nursery or whatever 5 days a week, it's a lot of time for them to be out. So yeah, it is difficult.
It's almost sometimes for me feels like you're sending your kids to work when you go to nursery, if you something, because they actually are effectively almost doing a longer working day than you are, because you're dropping them off and then you're picking them up. But is that because communities as we know them, like mum, dad, granny, granddad, auntie, uncle, no longer are like, we've all got bigger, the world's got smaller in a sense, so we commute wider, so therefore we kind of separated from the kids off at mum's, or you can't drop them off at granny's, or you can't drop them off at Auntie Sue's because whatever, because she didn't live close by, so you're very limited.
Yeah. The extended family's been kind of people corners of the globe. How many families as well have that idea that they're all living in
the same village
or whatever. Yes, it's gone for a lot of people. And also what kind of made it come as it stopped. Every time. Has it? The internet stopped. I wonder at what point. That's interesting.
Check it.